So we will recap based upon what we learned yesterday, that we discussed about importance of sthana. For doing anything in this world, we need a container. Only if there is a container, then the content will be added. When there is a container, that gives rise to stability, and that stability gives rise to proper actions. Otherwise we are very reactive. And then we also can be grateful to God. We also learn about different kinds of nations, and even the so-called controlled description also defines what is the nation's value based upon the political reality. We yesterday discussed mostly about the political reality. We discussed about dharmic secularism as opposed to the westernized secularism. Dharma itself is secular. We discussed last time dharma and shraddha. Dharma has no color, dharma has no flavor, dharma has no partiality. Dharma is a universal principle, vasudhaiva kutumbakam. Right. So therefore it is but understood. Now you don't have to explain. Dharma means Athithi Devo Bhava. Sometime it becomes too much. This very land of Bharata has been responsible for welcoming so many other faith people, and also gave rise to many faith centric new faith within the land also. Therefore it allows people to discover their roots of their Indian civilization. We also discussed the difference between nation and rashtra, right? How different nations are formed, and what is the concept of rashtra. Rashtra is not based upon even a small rashtra. You could have language from different parts. You could be speaking Telugu, Kannada, Malayali, Tamil. You could be speaking Odia, Assamese, Bengali. The nation was never divided based upon, the rashtra was never divided based upon language, religion, faith or philosophy. It was based upon geography, the power of the king to expand his territory without destroying their belief system, their understanding, assimilating, not appropriating, integrating with others. That is the concept of rashtra. And therefore we also discuss what is Bharat. It is ideology. Now this is we are going to discuss today, that what is Bharat basically. Is it a tattva, or is it also a place, a geography? Many times, as we were discussing in the beginning, that the pure spiritualist and the liberals have a misunderstanding about nation. And the Bhagavatam also explains in the 11th canto about this, that one who considers one's birthplace to be worshipable, his intelligence is as good as the intelligence of a cow and an ass. Right? Bhagavatam talks, go beyond the borders. At this very same time, that very Bhagavatam also talks about defining a place. Therefore, Bharat is an also ideology. I remember talking to someone. There are different understanding. Bharata, we will go and get into that. But the ideology, the Tattva Bharata, if you see, Bhava Raga Tal se Prachur, which is saturated with Bhava. I remember talking to an Air Force officer, and he had fought the Kargil war and is still there, working, dharmic soldier. So I was asking him, what is the difference between an Indian soldier fighting for his country and somebody else? And he made a very interesting point. He said, we can't be mercenary soldiers. He said 70 to 80% of our soldiers come with the principle of certain ideology. He said, what is our ideology? One is my personal ideology, and there is an ideology of the forces itself. He says, what is the ideology of the forces? He said, we are the Rashtra based upon cultural values. And one of our core culture is Atithi Satkar. Putting that Shraddha in others. And when the invaders come and they try to intrude into our system and our ideology, certainly we stop the geographical intrusion. But we also want to stop people from intruding into our mind space, our Sanskriti, our Sanskar. Therefore, I do not only fight for a space, a physical space, I also fight for allowing people to have a mental space wherein people can come from other places, learn, contribute and grow. Therefore, Bharata is a container also, and Bharata is a full of substantial content. Now the question might be raised, is it this topic not very controversial, Bharata Bhagya Vidhata? How can it be controversial unless we understand from the very core scriptures of the Dharma? Right? We are talking from the core scriptures of Dharma. So if you study carefully and understand deeply, we realize actually the purpose of this presentation not to feel pride. The purpose of this presentation not to feel superior. The purpose of this presentation not to feel exclusively special. Whichever civilization has played its identity based upon increasing the pride of the people on the level of the ego, it has caused limitless problem. Not only it has caused limitless problem, it also has the problem of being blind towards others' contribution. We are extending our seminar for 2 more days, tomorrow and day after, and we'll focus on these 2 principles: why nations fail and how do you rebuild your nation, your Rashtra. A very interesting subject matter. Lot of studies has been done in this regard, and we will study that. And generally, if you study the British Empire, if you study the Spanish colonizing the South America, the Portuguese, the Dutch, it was based on the foundational principle of white supremacy. White supremacy coming from the foundation of Christian evangelization. Right. So therefore, rather than learning and sharing knowledge from each other, they want to convert people, change people, make them better race. Right. One of the African leader and the South American leader also mentioned, he said, before the Europeans came to our country, we were primitive according to their description. What was our primitiveness? Our primitiveness was, we were worshipping our mountains. We were worshipping our rivers. We were looking at the sun and offering oblation to the sun. We are offering obeisances to the soil. So therefore, we were offering oblation to the soil. When the evangelic people came to our nation, they said, what is this? It is so primitive. It is not based upon the foundational principle of truth. It is untruth. It is pagan. And they say, they gave us the Bible to become reformed. We got the Bible with great respect because we were taught to respect everybody. The book came in our hand, but our land got polluted. Our rivers got polluted. Our mountains were broken. The mining happened. There was limitless conflict amongst us. Our culture was destroyed. Our language was destroyed. Recently, one of my friend is a professor teaching in one of the best management college. He was telling he went to South America. He said, what did he see in South America? All over South America, he went to a few places. He saw two things. One is poverty, and second is, all over there was Jesus' board. We don't have any problem with Jesus Christ. But he said that is what happened. The evangelic people came to convert, transform, make them prosperous, but instead of prosperity, they have the poverty and Jesus. That was the mantra he learned there when he went recently. So therefore, as a Bharatiya, as a practicing spiritualist, practicing dharmic values, we are not here to learn to develop our false pride. We are not here to glorify ourselves. We are not here to go back to our past and say, "Arey, apna past kitna acha tha." Not here. We are not here to become superpower. The whole principle of dharmic civilization is based upon contribution. We are here to contribute to the growth of the world, right? And therefore Lord Chaitanya made this famous statement, Bharat bhumite hoilo manusya janma sartaka kari paropakar. No? Contribution, understand yourself and contribute. In contribution, how does contribution happens? Contribution happens in a cooperative spirit. Have something to learn from your civilization and have something teach to your civilization. And this is the greatest contribution the dharmic civilization can do. So therefore the purpose of this whole learning is not to be proud. We will see this on the third day, why nations fail. Why did India one sense fail? It failed because one of the greatest reason was limitless blinded pride by some of its leaders in the bygone ages, and they made certain stupid mistakes based upon their arrogance without taking guidance from their own well-versed ministers. Therefore, Bharata denotes a humble spirit with an assertive, confident understanding of its civilization. When there is a grounded reality, what happens? You can fly as much as you want, but your ground should be very strong. Your root should be very strong. So therefore, let us, with great earnesty and humility, let us become confident. Let there be swabhiman, but not abhiman. Let there be smartness, but not stupidity. Let there be confidence, but not arrogance. Right? So therefore, it is both. Bharata is a geographical reality, and Bharata also means the thought reality, the ideology reality. So therefore, why Bharat? No, we quoted already Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He made this statement, whoever has taken birth in the land of Bharat should make his life perfect. But to make his life perfect, one has to understand what perfection is. Where is the place to perfect my life? On which platform am I operating that? In the Srimad Bhagavatam in the 3rd canto, there is a description of the spiritual world. The 4 Kumaras are traveling to the spiritual world. As they enter into the spiritual world, they see an amazing harmony amongst all the living entities, not only human beings, including the fruits, flowers, animals, right, the birds. So when they entered into the spiritual world, by seeing that beautiful harmony, they were stunned. And there is a description of different kinds of flowers: Bandara, Kunda, Karabodbala, Parijata, Punnaga, Naga, Bakulambuja. And then they also saw Vrinderchite, Tulasika Bharanina Tasya. They saw Tulsi, the Tulsi plant, the Tulsi leaves were given special privilege. It is explained in the Archana Paddhati. When you have a flower, you have a different kinds of flower, let all the flower be in one container, one thali, one plate. And the Tulsi should be placed in another thali because she has a special privileged position. It is not that she is playing the role of superior, but she is given that role by the other flowers. They are giving that role to Tulsi, other flower. And these four Kumaras, while describing the beauty of Tulsi, they also talk about this Tulsi has performed great tapasya. And the great Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he wrote those commentaries sitting in Vrindavan. Vrindavan, even though is there in this earthly planet, by very nature, it is beyond this earthly planet. Direct descendants of the spiritual realm, right? We study that, we read it, we have heard hundreds of lectures. And that very Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, in his commentary on the Bhagavatam, explains why Tulsi is special. This is Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says, Tulsi is special because she must have done special tapasya in the pious land of Bharata. And therefore that Tulsi is given special privilege. Is it the truth? Is it the bhava? Is it the rasa? What is it? Whatever it is, but our great Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, while practicing pure devotional service, living on begging, staying on a different tree every day, there was still exhibition of some affection, deep affection, for not the physical place because he was born here. He is feeling, I am fortunate to be born in the same place where Tulsi Maya performed her tapasya. Therefore, Lord Chaitanya is making this principle very clear, that one who is born here, again, let us speak it again and again. We are not here to feel proud. Yes, we want to be confident, we want to be grateful, we want to cooperate. Right. So, when we talk about Bharat being privileged, it is just to experience responsibility. If I claim to be Bharatiya, as Krishna explained to Arjuna in the 2nd chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, he told Arjuna, because of great birth gives rise to great responsibilities. Why Bharat? Again in the 5th canto, this description is not given by some Hindu fanatics. It is not come in Arnab Goswami's Republic television. It is not their pro-right wing media. In the Bhagavatam, in the Mahabharata, in the Bhagavad Gita, in the Ramayana, they have a beautiful ability to harmonize between left and right. When you churn, we have discussed this, churning, left, right, left, right, left, right. No, there is a spiritual communism and there is a spiritual royalty. The spiritual royalty, dharmic royalty, and the communism come together. We will discuss that, how to build the nation. Right. So what does Narad Muni say? He says, this land One who comes here, he can achieve ultimate perfection. This is from the 5th canto, 19th chapter. There is knowledge, there is mystic yoga system. Describe the glories of the Bhagavan. And Narad Muni spoke this to Shaubari Muni to teach the Bharatavarsha people, those who are a part of the Bharatavarsha people, they should understand this. Again, this is from the 5th canto, Bhagavatam, Srimad Bhagavatam, 19th chapter, verse number 2. What does it say? The Bharatvarsha offers proper land to execute spiritual life, which is freed from mundane knowledge and mundane action. And one who has a clear sensory perception, he can perform the beautiful devotional activities, a Sankirtan Yagya, right? And one who does not take it seriously, even though he is born here, he is as good as an ordinary animal, right? Now the next question, does Bhagavatam describe a symbolic Bharat? Again, we will come back to this. Oh, this Bharat could be anywhere. Some people may say Bharat could be, my very temple is Bharat. In one sense, yes, the very temple is Bharat, no doubt. But it is also the truth, because we are follower of Vaishnava philosophy, one and different. The temple is in Bharat. The temple is in Bharat. So therefore, what is this concept of, one may understand why Bharat? Because it gives that opportunity. And the next is, where is Bharat? Is there a territorial description in the scriptures? So precisely and clearly, the whole concept of invasion, the whole concept of Aryan invasion, it falls apart when you study this Puranic literature also, Mahabharata also, Ramayana also, Rigveda also, Manu Samhita also. What does it say? It says, Manu Samhita in the very second chapter, again Manu follows the whole concept of creation in the beginning. Srishti, Srishti, Srishti. If you read Adi Parva Mahabharata also, talks about creation. And what is this creation? It is said, the country which is created by God, which lies between the two sacred rivers, Saraswati and Drishavati, is called Brahmavarta. Kurukshetra, Matsya, Panchal and Shurasena are the regions which go by the name of Brahmarshi Desha. Right. North lies Himalayan mountains, south has Vindhya mountains, east there is Vinashana, where the river Saraswati is hidden. East there is again Prayag in Madhya Desh. East again there is an area surrounded by the sea. And Aryavarta is wherever the mountain ranges are located. Right. Again from Manu. What does Manu say? When you come to this land, the territory, geographical reality, when you come to this place, because every land has its own consciousness. Please understand this. When you go to Wall Street, originally in Wall Street, the trade used to happen, the slave trade used to happen. The slaves were sold and purchased. We will discuss that tomorrow. Right. When you go to that place, the vibration is like a thick Rajoguna. You have to break through that. Right. It is very interesting and very important to understand. In the Mahabharata, there is a descriptions of the land, and there is also description of people's consciousness. Recently, the Prime Minister spoke about Sanskriti, Vikriti and Prakriti. We keep on speaking this since ages. Ayodhya, Kishkinda and Lanka. Right, Ayodhya represents Sanskriti, Kishkinda represents Prakriti and Lanka represents Vikriti. But still, even in that Lanka, one can actually practice spiritual culture. Like Vibhishan established that spiritual culture. In Kishkinda, where people had some kind of behavior which is almost like the monkey, Vanara, Vanara, what kind of human beings are you? There were great souls, like our Tara was there, the wife of Wali, Hanumanji was there, Jambavan was there, Sugri was there, Angad was there. No, they were able to practice dharmic life. But here in this Bharata, what does Manu say? In this country there is a great accumulation of knowledge and people from all over the world come here to secure knowledge from the learned scholars. This we will discuss next to next day about the influence of vegetarianism in Europe. Have you ever heard the statement called as the Bostonian Brahmins? You must have not heard. You will hear about that, if not today, tomorrow. Right. Do you know how much in the scientific theory, whether it is Ramanuja who knew the infinity, metallurgy, astronomy, so many knowledge had gone from here. We'll discuss that. Where is Bharat? Where is that Bharat? Again, the Bharat, the central Dvipa is divided into 9 Varsha. The Jambu Dvipa has got 9 petals. Right. And the Earth planet is divided into 7 Dvipas by 7 oceans, one of the above Varshas. And 1 Varsha is considered as Bharat Bhumi. And you see this map, that is actually called as Bharata Varsha, where the Vedic culture was prominently practiced, very clearly practiced. You could add Afghanistan also to that. It was called as Gandhar Desh. Beyond Gandhar Desh, there is a conflict between Karna and Shalya. When Shalya became the chariot driver of Karna, you should study the description what they talk about different deshas. In that very description, our great Vyasadeva explains the psychology of Magadha Desha, explains the psychology of the Koshala Desha, explains the psychology of the Kuru Desha, and explains the psychology of the Dakshina Desha. And in that very discussion, Karna speaks to Shalya about the people from Madhya Desh, which is greater India, but not necessarily Bharata Varsha. It could be called as Bharata Khanda. What does Karna tell Shalya? Some good things also Karna spoke. He says, Ingitastu Magadha. Magadha people are so expert, so shrewd, so sharp. You can't beat Lalu Prasad. No, he has got a great ability to present, speak. Just imagine Chanakya, when he came there, he saw this. What does Mahabharata says? Ingitaschu Magadha. By simply symbolic gesture, they understand what you are talking about. Prekshitastu Magadha. and Prekshiptasu Koshala, and the Koshala people, by seeing Ardokta Kuru Panchala. Ardokta Kuru Panchala means you have to ask them half the word. What happened to my sons and the sons of the Pandus being assembled on the battlefield? Itna bola. Sanjay ne samajh liya. Sanjay could understand what Dhritarashtra wanted to say. And the south people, the Mahabharata explains, Purnokta Dakshinatya. You have to speak to them the complete statement. They are not necessarily in those times politically smart as much as the people in this area of Kuru and Magadha. So this map, if you study carefully, gives us some kind of understanding what Bharata was. Alright. So where is Bharata again? The country which lies to the south of the Himalayas. This is from Vishnu Puran. And north of the ocean is called Bharata. And Bharat is of the country. And where is Ilavrata? Same. Where is Bharata? The south of Ilavrata Varsha and extending from east to west are three great mountains named Nishada, Hemakunta and Himalaya. And they're very high. And there are three Varshas, Hari Varsha, Kim Purusha Varsha and Bharata Varsha. And very interestingly, in one of the purport, Prabhupada explains Kim Purusha Varsha. He says beyond Nepal. No, he talks about this. Nepal and other parts also. Sometimes these Varshas, are connected to the earthly planet only, and sometimes some other descriptions are here, but better to describe them based upon here. You can actually understand beyond Bharata Varsha which other Varshas are there. So Kim Purusha Varsha, the Nepal, Burma, maybe it goes little bit, Bhutan also, right? So then rivers in the Bharata, there are clear description what rivers flow in the land of Bharat. You cannot make mistake here. Oh, Bharat could have been some other place only. What is that? There are two rivers which are called as Nadya, Brahmaputra and Sona rivers are Nada. They are masculine in nature. Purush unko gender diya hai. And there are so many other rivers, and every river is there. We are only focusing on Tamraparni in south. Kaveri, of course everybody knows Kaveri. Godavari, then Tapi, Reva, Narmada, Mandakini, Yamuna, Saraswati, Gomati, Sarayu, Chandrabhaga. Right? These are the rivers. A very interesting point. The Britishers and the Yavana invaders, when they came to India, they tried to change the names of the cities. And they've changed lots of names. Bhagyanagar became Hyderabad. Prayag became Allahabad. Right? And then Ahmedabad also changed its name. So many cities' names were changed. But if you go to Bangladesh now also, or if you go to Pakistan now also, they could not change the name of the river. Sindhu is still flowing. If you go to Kashmir, we went to Kashmir, they have tried to change everything, but they have not changed the names of the rivers. As long as the rivers are there, the Ganga is there, Jamuna is there, whether you believe in Ganga and Jamuna or not, but Ganga and Jamuna continues to dominate your consciousness. And therefore that great Sahnai player, Bismillah Khan, what would he do? He grew up on the banks of Ganga. Right, the name Bismillah Khan was there, but Ganga was very much integral part of his life. Rivers are so important for the followers of Sanatan Dharma. Right. Then the next, the mountains are spoken. What is the mountain? In the Ilavarta Varsha, there are mountains. Malaya is there, Rishabha is there, Rishamukha is there, Srishaila is there, Venkatadri is there, Chitrakuta is there, Govardhan is there. So there are so many mountains. Vindhyachal is there. Now, can you see this mountain somewhere else? You can give new Govardhan name. You can invoke the spirit. It is allowed. What does it indicate? We are symbolically worshipping that same mountain somewhere in Australia. New Govardhan, New Vrindavan, New Talavan. That is beautiful. At the same time, there is a geographical reality which talks about this place, this land. And then we see the map of India. The next one, why did we receive the name of Bharata? Why the name Bharata came? Sorry, why did we get the name India? Where is this whole intriguing question? कि India नाम कहाँ से आ गया? Bharata and India, they have no connection whatsoever. If you see, it is only this country has two different names. We call America, we call states, we call USA, United States of America. आ ही जाता है, right? England, Scotland and Ireland all put together is called as Britain, right? But this is the only country which has two names. All the Indians in Hindi, in Kannada, in other languages we call Bharat. But when we are speaking in English, we say India. Indian Republic. India got independent in 1947. When the Prime Minister is also addressing, he does that. But so what is it? So it is very simple, at the same time very complex, that the people from China and people from the Arabic world, they called the people from the other side of the Sindhu. You know, it is connected to Indu, Sindhu, and similarly because of the mixture and apabhramsha, the people on the other side of the river became Indu and it became India. It is a name given by the outsiders. Just like you also acquire some name when your friends are not able to pronounce. If you have a big South Indian name, if you are not able to pronounce, some name is given. That becomes part of your name. That's an acquired name. So India is an acquired name and Bharat is a root civilizational name. And it started 486 BC and up to now, you know, you see this slide which different kinds of people call whatever they call. And then next one is, what does this Bharat teach? This Bharat teaches the concept of politically alert, spiritually absorbed and socially sensitive. Very interesting and very important. We become absorbed politically and we become disinterested in spiritual stability. If you study the character of many freedom fighters, they had a spiritual connection also. Whether it was Madan Mohan Malviya, whether it is Khadiram Bose, whether it is Bal Gangadhar Tilak, whether it is Mahatma Gandhi, whatever name you take, yes, some of us may not agree with their understanding of the scripture, but there was some connection to the scripture, right? It was not imposed upon the Congress party or Jansangh party. It was self-inspired, coming from their culture. Khudiram Bose, 17-year-old boy, when he was hung, he had a Bhagavad Gita in his hand. And it was not the Bhagavad Gita where you develop that inspiration to create, violence towards others, to believe that I am the spirit soul, because that is the core principle of Bhagavad Gita, right? The first person who received the Paramveer Chakra in India, Somanath Sharma, he was the student of Bhagavad Gita. So therefore, when there is an integration between the three, what does it do? It gives rise to great commitment, great growth. So therefore, this very land of Bharata brought forth not only great saintly people who are empowered by Krishna, in fact, Rajarshi. Rajarshi, the word Rajarshi means what? Rajarshi means one who is Raja outside, Rishi within. Bhagwan, Lord Vishnu, not only empowers the saintly people to spread the knowledge of spirituality, but he also empowered certain kings. If you study the stories of the kings, even after Kali Yuga, whether it is Rana Pratap, whether it is great King Pratap Rudra, whether it is Krishna Deva Rai, whether the great Shivaji Maharaj, the king, one who is the incarnation of Arjun in Manipur, right? So many kings came to this land and they actually lived. They may not be as great as Parikshit Maharaj, but the spirit was there to contribute to the growth of the people. Right? They were socially sensitive. Great Krishna Deva Rai compiled in Telugu language the beautiful prayers of Andal, Goda Devi. Shivaji Maharaj, if you go to South India in Tanjavur, I've heard one friend was telling, there are verses compiled where he speaks about, I came here to conquer. My time has gone conquering one fort to other fort, but I need to conquer this fort of my limitation also. काम, क्रोध, लोभ, मद, मोह, मत्सर, इस फोर्ट को भी जीतना है. He was willing to give up everything. But the great Tukaram Maharaj and Ramdas Swami, they fired that great inspiration in him, that you remain Rajarshi. And that great Ramdas Swami, the Guru of Shivaji, very interesting, very, very interesting, that this personality had such a great appreciation for this great king. He would tell, I have got two great heroes in my life. One is Lord Ram and second is Shivaji. He maintained his Vairagya when Shivaji invited him for coronation. When Shivaji Maharaj invited him for his coronation, he was involved in firing the enthusiasm, but during the coronation he said, my dear Shivaji, he said, I am an ordinary beggar. It is not right on my part for me to come to your palace, but I will be there completely blessing you to take this principle of Sanatan Dharma. Keep that dharmic principle so aligned with you. Right? So therefore, it is very important that these royalties contributed very nicely. They were also empowered. If you study carefully, I remember, I need to mention this point. There are some people believe when Shivaji Maharaj escaped from Mathura, from Agra, we know that story, some of you don't know. When he escaped from Agra, not rather escaping, it was like Lord Krishna making Jarasandha go crazy. Krishna disappeared from Jarasandha. Krishna disappeared from Yavana king. He was looking, where is Krishna? Where is Krishna? No. So similarly, Shivaji Maharaj fooled Aurangzeb, not escaped. He fooled Aurangzeb, and with his entire party of 300 people, now also people are studying how it happened. How is it possible for you to escape from Aurangzeb, who was able to kill his brothers, who tormented his father, right? His father wrote a poem. He said, my dear son, you are not allowing me to see Jamuna, you are not allowing me to see Taj Mahal. कम से कम मुझे दिखाओ, मुझे जमुना को दर्शन करना है, because it was on the bank of Jamuna. So then he wrote this thing. He said, the Hindus offer water even to the departed souls. अरे कम से कम मुझे जीवित बाप को पानी तो पिलाओ जमुना का. It is not easy to escape, right? Shivaji escaped from there. And when he came to Raigad, it is explained by some secular people. Unfortunately, what do they say? That because of Shivaji Maharaj's escape, Aurangzeb sent forth great force and broke the temple of Radha Govind. And unfortunately, sometime, when devotees hear that kind of story, I know some Maharashtrian devotees, they came and asked me. They were confused. In one hand, they were saying that our temple was destroyed because Shivaji Maharaj went away from there. Now the question is raised, yes, it is a painful reality, but if Shivaji Maharaj had not escaped, would you remain practicing Sanatan Dharma and a Hindu? And if we are not a Hindu, would you ever go to Vrindavan? Have you read the stories of Maharashtra? Without Shivaji Maharaj, what happened? Therefore, it is our responsibility to offer Rina. Rina is not that you are obliged. Even if you are a devotee of Krishna, it is your responsibility because you are not in sannyas dharma. You are not practicing pure renunciation where everything is automatically gone away from you. We offer gratitude, and part of that gratitude is offering gratitude to our ancestor in all the turmoil, all the difficult, all the challenging situation. They went out from one place to other place, but they never compromise with their values, their faith and their purpose of worship. And the great Shivaji Maharaj, the great Rana Pratap, the great Krishna Deva Rai, under their gurus, they struggle to maintain this. You can rebuild the temples, but it is very difficult to come back to the faith which you have given up. And therefore, it is an important responsibility to those who have left the fold of Sanatan Dharma officially, those who have lost faith in Sanatan Dharma because of their liberal attitude, those who have lost their identity with Sanatan Dharma because of poverty, change of place, problematic reality, they should understand the integral reality and allow people in a very knowledgeable way, educational way, speak an integrated understanding. And therefore, one very interesting saintly person said, he said, just like we offer Shraddha to our forefathers, Like Lord Narsinga told Prahlad Maharaj, my dear Prahlad, I have touched your father. He is completely purified. But still you should perform Shraddha for your father, because that is a setting of an example to the society. Right? So whenever you offer Shraddha to your ancestor, there is a concept of Rashtra Rin also. Not only to the saintly people, but also to the saintly kings. And unfortunately, the saintly kings, the great Rana Pratap ji, he lost his life at the age of 58. Shivaji Maharaj lost his life at the age of 53, and Aurangzeb stayed more than 90 years. The great Bajirao Peshwa, people only know Mastani and Bajirao because that is what Bollywood presents. Right? They don't present the religious aspect of Bajirao, the deep devotion of Bajirao. You study Jhansi Rani in your history book, but have you studied Jhansi Rani's connection to spirituality? Every day she would write 1,000 holy names of Lord Ram. She would get up at 3 o'clock in the morning, perform her spiritual practices, and rule the kingdom properly, come back in the evening, read Bhagavad Gita. And one of the battle when she was losing, she started crying, weeping. And her teacher taught her Bhagavad Gita. He said, my dear daughter, you are a follower of Sanatan Dharma. Your duty is to perform your duty without any result. He spoke to her the second chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. She rose back again, collected her forces, joined with Tata Tope and Nana Sahib, and captured few of the forts, including the Sindhia fort. They fought the Britishers. And do you know, when she was dying, in her lips there was the name of Lord Ramachandra. Was she only a freedom fighter, or was also fighting for her own soul? But that part is not narrated to us. Right? So therefore, there has to be Rina offered to these great personalities, our ancestors also. Acknowledging, one may say, kya bhai alag kuch karna padega kya other than the Hari Naam? If you are practicing devotional service, you continue. There is no compromise in that regard, but acknowledge. If you do not acknowledge, if you are not aware, if you are not conscious about it, some other understanding will come to you. Unfortunately. Now there are sometimes people who come from the liberal left background. They come from the liberal left background, but they have a practice of spirituality also. उनकी साधना आध्यात्मिक होती है, परंतु ऐतिहासिक सोच लेफ्ट लिबरल की होती है. It's a very खतरनाक combination. It's a deadly combination. Right? And such a deadly combination, what does it do? It gives rise to escapism. I remember somebody was telling me, he said, there was some news of cows being slaughtered and some people were saving the cows. But there are some people, they said, okay, this is not none of our business. We are not into this. We have to just focus on our spirituality. Right? Yes, you are not supposed to go and fight, but at least be aware. Explain to those who are involved. At least take responsibility of caring for the cows. If I increase the caring for the cows, they will not go to the slaughterhouse. Right? So therefore, it is important to understand this principle. And since the human life is so sublime, what do you see here? Since the human life is so sublime, it is explained that integral spiritual realization, all the devatas in the heavens speak about this Bharata Bhumi. Again, in the 5th canto, 19th chapter, 25th verse of the Bhagavatam, what do they say? How wonderful is that for those human beings who have taken birth in Bharatavarsha. They must have executed unlimited pious activities. Worship the Supreme Lord. Otherwise, how is that they are able to do something? Have you heard the name of Birsa Munda? Those who studied little tribal culture, they must have studied Birsa Munda's story. Birsa Munda is only known as a freedom fighter. He is only known as a tribal leader. Vanvasiyon ke neta the. And most people don't even know. I think somewhere in Bihar, there is an airport named after him, Birsa Munda. Google and see Birsa Munda. Who was Birsa Munda? Now, Birsa Munda got converted to Christianity at the age of 15 or 16. But at the age of 20, 21, he realized he fought against the Britishers. He died at the age of 23. But his core values? He followed Lord Chaitanya's philosophy. When he reconverted to Sanatan Dharma, Ghar Vapsi, it was done. So he taught everyone to keep Tulsi in front of their home. They would chant the names of the holy name. He continued doing that. Along with that, he also added the struggle against the Britishers. Right. So the inherent character of understanding their root, their Atma Dharma and their Rashtra Dharma, when they are integrated properly, eventually this Sthanam gives rise to great progress in spirituality. And therefore the Devatas also praise that they want to take birth here. And what is the speciality of Bharat? That the speciality of Bharat, all the 4 Purusharthas can be practiced properly. All the 4 Purusharthas. The great Lord Ramachandra is speaking this to Bharat. Narad Muni, Narad Muni is speaking this to our Yudhishthira Maharaj. Goddess of fortune Lakshmi is speaking to Rukmini. Recently I just compiled a small book called as Money and Mahabharat. We have not printed it because of COVID. An interesting, fascinating information is there based on the Mahabharat. And what is that one interesting information? The one interesting information the Mahabharata explains, and Ramayana also explains. Narad Muni tells this to Yudhishthira Maharaj. What does he say? He says, my dear Yudhishthir, अर्थ से धर्म का नाश नहीं होना चाहिए और धर्म से अर्थ का नाश नहीं होना चाहिए. धर्म should not destroy prosperity and prosperity should not destroy your dharma. They should be integrated rather than having a conflict with each other. And that great Narad Muni, one who taught Srimad Bhagavatam principle to Vyasadeva, that very Narad Muni, one who gave Valmiki Ramayana to Valmiki Maharshi, that very Narad Muni who changed Dhruva Maharaj, who gave the path of spirituality to Prahlad Maharaj, the sons of Daksha Prajapatis, Chitraketu Maharaj, name it, so many people he gave. What does that Narad Muni say to Yudhishthira Maharaj when he comes to his kingdom, giving the values of integrated life? He said 3 things, very interesting. He said, my dear Yudhishthir, wealth should be used for increasing the wealth. If you are a leader, you need more wealth. For what? Not for yourself. Wealth se wealth ko badao. He says, increase wealth from wealth. More informations are there. Use that wealth for gratifying dharmic sukha. Bhogena punyam kushalena papam. And third, Narad Muni told Yudhishthira Maharaj, You use that dana, use that wealth for giving dana to others. Expansion of wealth, enjoyment of wealth, and distribution of wealth. Same thing Lord Ram told Bharat Maharaj. Rukmini and Lakshmi's conversation. Lakshmi is asked by Rukmini. We get to hear about Krishna speaking Bhagavad Gita, but we never get to hear Lakshmi speaking. People don't worry about Lakshmi speaking or not. They stand in front of Lakshmi's picture. It doesn't matter whether you are a Buddhist, it doesn't matter you are a Jain, it doesn't matter you believe in God. Lakshmi Puja to hona chahiye. All the shopkeepers, they do Lakshmi Puja. How can somebody being atheist worship Lakshmi, Saraswati and Parvati? So what does this Lakshmi? Rukmini asked Lakshmi, where do you reside? I am coming to this point. Why would Rukmini ask this question to Lakshmi? And you know what? Very interesting point Lakshmi said, which may stun and shock our people. She said, my dear Rukmini, I do not stay with those people who are satisfied. जो समाधानी है ना, उनके पास मैं निवास नहीं करती हूँ. Once again, I am not making a mistake here. She says, wherever people are satisfied, I do not reside there. Satisfaction of the self is important, but dissatisfaction for the growth of others is most important. Therefore, it is explained in the Dharma Shastras, the king and the teacher should be surrounded by less privileged people. The teacher should be surrounded by ignorant people, not qualified people. Let the qualified people be left alone because they will manage their life, they will grow. The teacher should take the ignorant people, help them become educated, send them away, bring next set of ignorant people. And what the king is supposed to do? King is supposed to take darshan of everyday poor people, the broken people, to understand that I should not be satisfied. Therefore, an interesting principle of dharmic yuddha, in the dharmic context, why it is called as dharma yuddha, not shraddha yuddha, not philosophy yuddha. It was yuddha so that if I got a larger territory, I can provide greater contribution to my people. We will discuss this tomorrow, but I'll make this point. When the Britishers came to India, just before they started capturing the power in India, if you study how the great kings built temples and what was the taxing rate before the Britishers came, the taxing was less than 1/6 of your earning. You know how much money Vijayanagar kings were actually accumulating every year? It is explained they would accumulate 1 lakh gold coins every year. Then the diamond and every other aspects also. I have read in one place the average salary of the people was something like 30 rupees. And the yearly expenses were 9 rupees. How much? In Vijayanagar kingdom, it was very prosperous kingdom. The salary was 30 rupees and expenses were 9 rupees. That doesn't mean that the poverty was not there. There is no such place in the world. There was never such place in the world where people were not poor. Take the story of Sudama in Krishna's time. In Krishna's time, if Sudama was suffering, starving, whether personally because he wanted to prove his renunciation doesn't matter. Poverty was there. Why would you think Krishna in Dwarka, read the Srimad Bhagavatam 10th canto, why was he planting trees and excavating wells? It was a regular phenomena. Therefore, when we give narration to people about Bharata, please hear this. Yes, that is the truth. That people come to Bharata not for material progress. They come for spiritual discovery. That is the core character of Bharata. But at the same time, this land could also teach one what is true Artha Shastra. It can teach you what is true sense gratification. Therefore, it is an integral knowledge. The knowledge of the spirit, the Atma, and the knowledge of the community. Will Durand, one of the great historians, says, when the Mughal kingdom was breaking down, the Marathas had grown, they had become very big. They went up to Peshawar. And then slowly that also started breaking apart. So what does he say? Will Durand says, India became politically weak, but not necessarily prosperity wise. You see the figure tomorrow. You will understand the figures. Prosperity wise, there was limitless wealth. Therefore, we knew the art. The Bharatiyas knew the art of wealth management. But some or other, we don't know when, this concept of false vairagya crept into people's consciousness. It became extreme. The good people started despising the wealth. And those who are not so dharmic, they started accumulating more and more wealth. But if you study carefully, if you understand carefully, Bhishmadev in the Mahabharata again, the concept of administration when he talks about Dharmaraj, Yudhishthira Maharaj's kingdom, there is a king. Who is he? He is not a lawmaker. Please, another very brilliant concept of Bharatiya Prashasan, the governance of Bharatiya mentioned by Chanakya and Bhishma also. The laws are not made by the king. King is not a lawmaker. King is a law keeper. वो नियम नहीं बनाता परंतु नियमों की रक्षा करता है. And who makes the law? Laws are not made by somebody comes from outside of the country, जिसको यहाँ की संस्कृति की जानकारी नहीं है. We'll get into those details little bit day after tomorrow. What does Chanakya and what does Bhishmadev says? He says, collect people from the ground reality. Ask their advice. They will give you the knowledge about how to develop a water body. Not somebody who studied in the textbook. Right? Those who are real people. So therefore, there was an integration of Adhyatma and Vyavhar. There was integration of Dharma, Artha, Kama and Moksha. Therefore, when we speak to people, yes, our emphasis is on spirituality, no doubt, if you want to visit Bharat. But it also offered the great ability to understand wealth management. Therefore, Dharma is the border, Moksha is the border, and within this gadi, ye sima ke beech mein, there is the Artha and Kama. Kama doesn't go beyond the Dharma and Moksha. And Artha doesn't go beyond Artha and Kama. They are within the border. This was the beautiful presentation. Right. And then the very interesting part of the secular India you call, the secular India, what do you see here? The very interesting concept, what we see here is, can you put that slides of war cry? The war cry of the people, if you see carefully, even now, the war cry. Hello? Yeah. The war cry, the slide is not coming up, the war cry. Okay, it's okay. If you study carefully, if you can go and Google the war cry, every war cry of an Indian army is based upon all the Vedic mantras. The Indian Navy talks about the water body, right, from the Vedas. The Gadwali regiment, they call out the holy names of Badrinath, Badri Vishal. In this way, there was a beautiful understanding. Now also, if you go to Parliament, if you ever go to the Parliament of India, what do you see in the Parliament of India? In the Parliament of India, what we see is so many concepts of Vedic mantras. Whether it is Vidura speaking to Yudhishthira Maharaj, that is there. Vasudhaiva Kutumbaka is there. Ahimsa Paramo Dharma is quoted from Shanti Parva, that is there. All that is very beautifully explained. Now let us understand, how did India influence the people of the Western world? How did they influence? India influenced the Western world very interestingly. Have you ever heard the word Bostonian Brahmins? Most of us, we have not heard. This phrase was coined in the 18th century. The people who engaged in transcendentalist writing of the upper class in New England were known as the Boston Brahmins. Not because of the caste consciousness, because of their elevated understanding. It was penned by Oliver Wendell. And who were these three people? Emerson, he practiced, there was called as, one was practicing the Karma Yoga, other was practicing Bhakti Yoga, and some other person was practicing Jnana Yoga. They were called as Bostonian Brahmins. Next. We see the slides are not moving fast. Yeah, so we also see, sorry, just there's some confusion. Yeah. So we see that the real quotes are given here from the British Raj. This book is written by none other than Max Muller. What does Max Muller say? Very interesting. Max Muller, when he was giving, he gave a 5-lecture series to the people who are supposed to go to India for IS exams, to study IS here. What did he say? He says, not to be afraid of India throwing him to an intellectual exile. He said, don't think that you have been sent there. He said, because they had to come to India and stay for a year long time. He said, if you care for geology, there is a work for you from the Himalayas to Ceylon. This is Max Muller's word. If you are fond of botany, there is flora rich for many hookers. If you are zoologist, think of Haeckel, who is just now rushing through Indian forest and dredging in Indian seas. He said India is like the realization of the brightest dream of his life. He said if you are interested in ethnology, why India is like a living museum. If you are fond of archaeological survey, that also he can do. And then he explained, there is some confusion with my slide, sorry. Yeah. No, previous slides. And this person who presented the I'm sorry, there was some confusion about the slide. Now go to the next slides, next two slides. Yeah. The Max Muller also presented, yes, this is a good one. He explained about what is a village. Now village, he presented that a political unity or a social cell of India. Unfortunately, what happened was, while during writing of the constitution, we'll get into the details tomorrow, unfortunately, the educated elitist, they considered village to be one of the most corrupt place in India without studying it properly. But Max Muller is telling, if you want to know real India, my dear people, what you have to see? You have to go and see India. Colonel Sliman, he said one does not know India or its people if they don't know them in their village community. The village life in India has real character more than any other country we know. Why was his words taken very seriously by Max Muller? Now very interesting, this Colonel Sliman was appointed by the British government to deal with the thugs. Right, you know the story of the thugs. I think recently some movie also came. The story of thugs, and this Colonel Sliman went across all over India trying to pin them down. His goal was to capture, whom he was supposed to capture? He was supposed to capture the people who were making mistakes. But while capturing people who were making the mistake, Colonel Sliman also came in contact with Indian thought process. And Max Muller quotes him. He said there are three kinds of people in India. One is always tell the truth. Second, will not hesitate to lie. And third, will lie regardless of motive. And he said, you know what? He said the largest majority is the second type. They lie, but if you bring something to them, some Quran, all that, then what do? They immediately take back, because there is a natural practice of trust and belief in God. Right? And where do these people came from? They came from the village background. And if you study the book called as Beautiful Tree, one of the student of Gandhiji writes about how much these people, which people? The village people had the understanding of the village community, understand the prosperity dynamics, they had the understanding of spiritual dynamics, they had the understanding of social dynamics. And therefore Chanakya and Bhishma in their respective Arthashastras, They say the leader should come from this kind of background. And who is giving this opinion? Somebody practicing the judgment after 30 years. Next one. So therefore, it is very important for us to understand, the Chinese accounts of Hindu character. Let us see something. This is exact words of Yuan Sang. Who is quoting this? Again, Max Muller is quoting it. I have not received a proper quote. He contributed a lot to the damage of Indian narratives, but I do not know, I have not received, but I have heard from somewhere, therefore I have not put that quote, that Max Muller, he said, after my death, it is my wish, if I ever come back, I want to be born in the land of Kashi, in the house of a people who study the Vedas. And what does Huat San say? Now the Indians are light temperament. Again, we are not here to make ourselves, feel greatly arrogant, privileged, superiorist, chosen people. No. All this understanding has to give greater responsibility in regards to cooperative contribution. So what does he say? Though the Indians are of light temperament, they are distinguished by the straightforwardness and honesty of their character. With regard to riches, they never take anything unjustly. With regard to justice, they make even excessive concession. Straightforwardness is the distinguishing feature of their administration. If you study the Maratha character, when Jadunath Sarkar writes the Maratha character in his book, what does he say? He said they were so valorous and sportive, even wanted to, when they wanted to attack their enemies, they would tell them that कि हम आने वाले हैं. Therefore, the battles, other than the Rakshasas, even Ravana eventually, of course, he used lot of deception, but the battle would always happen where people would face each other. There was facing of each other. They would face each other, and what would they do? They would face and fight, never deceiving. The whole invaders' army, when they came to India, what happened was, they started causing trouble of deception, and our people did not know about this. Next one. And therefore we see that the Muhammadan accounts of Hindu character, the Indians are naturally inclined to justice and never depart from it their action. Their good faith, honesty and fidelity to their engagement are well known, and they are famous for these qualities, and so many people flock to their country. Now forget this. When Subhash Chandra Bose was raising his army in the distant land, in the Orient, right, the people who had joined the British force and they were war prisoners, the Japan gave those war prisoners to Subhash Chandra Bose. But these people were still not wanting to fight. They said, no, humne to, we are fighting for the British, sir. How can we do like this? That to be communicated. Now this is real fight you are doing. This is your real loyalty. So that the confusion, therefore, one of the great, freedom fighter, he said that the problem with Indians is that they took the commitment so seriously, the commitment to the wrong people, to such a serious thing that they were willing to cause harm to their own civilization. They are willing to cause harm to their own civilization. And therefore, the next principle was Marco Polo's account of Hindu character. With this we will stop. Who is Marco Polo? He came in 12th or 13th century. And whom did he encounter? He encountered the Brahmins, those who are really practicing properly. These Brahmins who were not traders by professions, but were appointed by the kings for great transaction, are the best merchants in the world and the most truthful, for they would not tell a lie for anything on earth. Sounds so full of aggrandizement, right? It sounds so wrong, right? And these people did not stay 1 or 2 days, and they did not come with large number of delegates from the Western world, coming, staying in a 5-star hotel, going into the Lutyens place, Khan market, big people, the left media, they tell you the truth, you go back to your country, you write about it. No. These people stayed for years together, interacting with people, talking to the people, and understanding the psyche, not coming for 3 days or 4 days, coming for years, walking into the village. How is it possible that this could be reality? What happened to that understanding? Why our people have become so corrupt? Where this corruption has come about? And the cause of this corruption will be discussed tomorrow in regards to why nations fail. A very interesting subject. The Indians, again one last one, the Indians are innumerable, like grains of sand. This is in the 13th century, right? Just imagine, because the land where they lived, the citizens were less in number. The Indians are innumerable, like grains of sand, free from all deceit and violence. They fear neither death nor life. This is the verse spoken by Narad Muni also in the 7th canto. Don't speak about so much about death, and don't speak so much about life. Just observe how the time is moving about. We'll stop here and we will discuss the rest of the slides, along with that the new subject on the same. What is that subject? Why nations fail. Thank you. Any questions or comments tomorrow? Tomorrow is the same time. We will come, that is 5:30. We will discuss this topic. Any questions or comments? Yeah, I am able to hear. So therefore we will discuss this tomorrow. I said, therefore, why nations fail. There is a great study done about this, and it's a very interesting subject matter and very simple. One is, please understand, as we discussed yesterday, neither the Mleccha forces or Yavana forces conquer India completely. The definition of conquering from the Western perspective is a political conquer. But from India's perspective, conquering is a cultural conquest. So therefore, it is the only country in the world. Of course, China is there, which is, trying to prove their power, their traditional power also, right? their cultural power also. But that country is taken over by the communist brutes. In America, there is this presentation. The Chinese community, they present this beautiful, drama, dance drama for 2 hours. Yan, you, something like that. And very interesting, these are all presented by the Chinese, and consciously they oppose the present Chinese government. They said this is anti-spiritual, very beautiful. I went with some devotees to watch that. Right. So, but with India, India was never conquered. A political conquer happened, some here, some there. Even the Britishers tried to conquer politically, culturally, socially, education-wise, from every perspective. This is the only country did not completely budge. Every time it would rise. Why? Because we had the Rishi Parampara, we had the Acharya Parampara, we had the knowledge Parampara. Therefore, politically we got distracted, but culturally less distracted. Any other question? Yeah. So therefore one has to understand, that's a very interesting principle to know, good question, that if you study the history of India, this is like R.C. Mazumdar, some of the greatest historians have explained this very nicely. Have you studied the conquest of Tibet by the Chinese? No, we don't study, right? When Dalai Lama, he was invited to inaugurate Shivaji's museum near Pune by one news reporter called as Francis Gauthier. You must have heard his name. He has made a museum of Shivaji with whatever resources he had. And interestingly, Dalai Lama was invited. Now, what does Shivaji Maharaj represent? Shivaji Maharaj represents, battles. Shivaji Maharaj represents valor. Shivaji Maharaj represents, conquest. Shivaji Maharaj represents heroism, taking his maulas. And what does Dalai Lama represent? Dalai Lama represents complete abstinence from any kinds of violence. It's very interesting. I remember talking to some children that Buddhism does speaks about non-violence, but they are not necessarily vegetarians. They are not necessarily vegetarians. On the other hand, Krishna, Lord Ramachandra, the Pandavas, right, Balaji or Peshwa Bajirao, right, they were all vegetarians, but not necessarily non-violent. So another principle is brought when Ashoka, the great Ashoka, when he took to the path of agnostic religion, Buddhism defines itself very clearly. This is not I am giving that definition. Buddhism is synonymous to agnostic. That is how they define themselves. And because of the non-violence presentation, it was very sad. The royalty took to non-violence principle and made the rule of their administration. And because they made the rule of administration, unfortunately what happened, if you study the history of India, the Greek forces again started intruding into India. And again to repeat that, the Chinese did not shoot one bullet to remove all the Tibetan people from their country. And Tibet is not a small country, it's quite large place. May not be all places inhabitable, but it's a large space. Without even shooting, they were shifted to India. No? They were shifted to India. Now one may say, अरे देखो violence तो नहीं हुआ ना, कम से कम जीवन तो बच गया. Go and talk to those people. Migrating from their very land, giving up their very land and settling in some other land is not very easy. It is like everyday death. Talk to the elderly Sindhi community, those who are 70, 80-year-old. They will tell that story. They would say death is preferable than simply living a painful life. Therefore, for the Kshatriyas, it was very important not to create battles. It is not that 24 hours, 365 days battles were happening. If you study the history of 1000 years and put all the figures in India, how many people got killed fighting the war, as against how many people are getting killed simply by abortion. हिंसा की बात कर रहे हो तो स्टैटिस्टिक को देना पड़ेगा ना. If you do not engage Kshatriyas in the right spirit of judicial violence, the violence will happen. The violence will happen. The mental disorder, the violence at the home, lavish life. So therefore, it is not that they wanted to wage a war and kill, but it is part of your life. Non-violence and violence will always exist. It all depends upon how less you will do. You think because of the civilized society now, there are less wars and less killing? We may not kill on the battlefield. We do not take the statistics. We say the lifespan has increased in the modern time because of the modern medicine. Certainly, but what kind of life? What kind of life? The mental depression, the people who die because of the painkiller what they take. They are lying without any meaningfulness in their life, without any contributing. And plus death, so much of death is happening in regards to, I remember reading this statistics about 5 to 7 years ago, about 10 years ago I think, China, since the invasion, since the understanding of abortion, they had killed 40 crore children in the womb. 40 crore children in the womb. Is that figure not supposed to be discussed at all? That is not to be calculated. Therefore, what is said, it is better to live according to the principle of life, and part of that principle is valor. Fighting for the right cause. The fight will continue to exist. You cannot stop. The principle is, what kind of fight do you want to have? Brutally murdering babies unborn, or fighting for right cause. So therefore it is very important, very interesting to understand the entire 1000 years. I am talking about the history. Take the history of 1000 years, calculate all that, especially in the Bharat Bhumi, and see how many deaths happened, and go against that. The modern civilization in India, how many people have been killed? The British people, who are known to be very refined, the language, the presentation, just see how many people were killed only in Bengal. The Bengal famine has killed tons of people, and the refined people sitting in the British Parliament, for them it did not matter. In one sense, Winston Churchill killed as many people as Hitler killed, but he does not become a villain, because the people who were killed were the black Bengalis, poor Indians. Does it matter? Therefore the narratives has to be understood properly. Once we understand properly, then we understand there is a judicious violence and there is a brutal violence. And therefore Krishna in the Mahabharata told the Kauravas, हम अहिंसा के पूजक है. Our goal is ahimsa paramo dharma. But at the same time we do not keep our bow. We do not keep our Sudarshan Chakra. Krishna plays his flute if you are a Brajabasi. But if you are not a Brajabasi, then Krishna blows his conch, inviting for you to learn a lesson. So do not only talk about Krishna, one who is folding flute. You need to be qualified to hear Krishna's flute. Right? Krishna के हाथ में मुरली भी है और शंख भी है. तो दोनों को समझना बहुत ही महत्वपूर्ण है. So we'll stop here. One question we will take from the Radha Gopinath Facebook. No. So somebody asked this question: Christians came to India to give us Bible. We accepted it very respectfully. In Africa, Christians went for converting. Poverty prevalent there. So before Britishers or Muslim came to India, was there no exploitation of poor by rich or weak by strong? Very simple. Therefore, again we will discuss this tomorrow. See, the faith-centric exploitation is more dangerous when the powerful people exploit the poor people. Because whenever the powerful people exploit the poor people for the sake of power, there is always a revolution. There is always a revolution. You can study that very carefully. Always there is a revolution. But when the faith captures you, faith exploits you, the people who want to create a revolution, they start thinking, should I do it? Because they are people of God. I'll give an example. There is this famous American author. He wrote this book called as Justice. He gave us a beautiful example. He said when American soldiers were in Afghanistan, right, and they were in these mountains of Afghanistan, and suddenly 3 or 4 shepherds came there and they bumped into each other. The shepherds saw the American soldiers and the American soldiers saw the shepherds, and they captured them, and they couldn't tie them and keep them a corner. They said, what to do now? I think there were 4 soldiers and the other part of the soldiers were other places, and they decided, one of them decided, we'll shoot them, we can't afford. Then the other soldier said, no, we can't shoot them because if we shoot them, it's not fair, they are not the evil doers, why should we shoot them like that? So of the 4 or 5, what happened was there was a tie. 2 people said yes, 2 people said no. And the leader of that, I think there were 5 soldiers, the leader of them was practicing Christian belief. And he wanted to practice the principle of, even if somebody slaps you, don't slap them back. That was only practiced by Jesus. But the Crusaders did not practice. Christianity did not spread by this philosophy alone. If you study carefully the Goa's Inquisition, you will understand. So, but this person, this soldier wanted to practice, right? So they decided them, let go, we will leave them alone. And they went away. And what happened? They did not consider that these people are very kind to us. They went back and told their people who were closely connected to the army of the jihadis. Within no time, these soldiers came, they killed the 4 American soldiers, they destroyed the American ship, about 30 to 40 soldiers were killed, and the guy who survived was the Christian who had forgiven them. So what happened? So he wrote, he said, what did I do? By letting them go, I became responsible to death of my own people. From a politically, I made a damage. And spiritually also, in one sense, for him it was like, these were Christian, they were not Christian. That also concept came. So therefore, again, we discussed this yesterday. In India, war did not happen based upon faith. War did not happen based upon philosophy. War did not happen based upon, religious ideology. War did happen because of the arrogance of the king, power hunger of the king. We'll discuss that tomorrow. How did Krishna Deva Rai leave his body? No? What happened to Rana Pratap in one sense? There was a betrayal by the own family members also. So there are stories. So therefore exploitation did happen. For your information, again this is a statistics. Up until 1760, the ratio between poor and the rich, you know how much? Take for example the poorest state. Apparently poorest states are like, some say Odisha. Even in Odisha, the average, the ratio between the rich and the poor was 1:9 or 1:18. The poor people would eat the same lentil, same rice. They may not get the pure ghee as much as the rich people got. But you know what is the distinction between the poor and the rich now? My dear friends, the exploitation happens more than ever before. There is a greater exploitation with education. The corruption becomes much greater by education compared to what happened 500 years ago, 700 years ago, 1000 years ago. But some other the modern, again this question helps us to understand how our narratives has been so screwed up. We think that the modern men and women are more refined, more sensitive in regards to contributing to others. But the statistics tells everything. And in the last, we hear during Ram Raj, people were very prosperous and there was no one poor. Is it because of our nature of naturally inclined to justice was the reason for our being invaded and cheated, and how could we have acted so that we still adhere to our nature but do not get dominated by foreign forces? Again, whichever yuga it was, one has to understand duality is part of life. When we say Rama Rajya, that does not mean that there was no pain at all. Within Rama Rajya, there was Manthara who destroyed the happy living of Ayodhya. In that very Rama Rajya, there was Wali who kidnapped his brother's wife. So understand, when the Shastras speak that everybody was good, that means what? Larger number of people were satisfied compared to not satisfied. But because the material world is a land of duality, it is the duty of the king is to minimize the poverty, maximize the prosperity, maximize the stability, minimize the instability, create less and less disproportionate growth of wealthy people and poor people. Right? Simple example, before the Britishers came, we talk about the Shudras. Oh, Shudra ke saath aisa hua, Shudra ke saath aisa ho gaya. If you study, most of the Shudras in India were independent people. They never worked for anybody. A potter, a cobbler, a goldsmith, a blacksmith, a stone breaker. What would do? they would choose when to work, they would choose when not to work. They worked for others in regards to contributing, but not as the servants of the wealthy people. ऐसे लोगों की संख्या कम थी. Nowadays, even the teacher is working, even the sadhus are working, unfortunately. Forget anybody else. सबके सब नौकर बन के बैठे हुए हैं. लेकिन what was the reality before the Britishers came? Less number of people should be dependent and more number of people should be independent. Just to make more number of people independent, some people has to be dependent. Therefore, Manu, in Manu Samhita, in our relationship seminar, we quoted this verse. Manu says, and it does not distinguish between poor, rich, women, men, nobody. He said, what is happiness? Happiness is where there is a self decision making capacity. What is misery? Misery is that when somebody else has to make a decision for you. Jahan responsible independence hai, wherever there is responsible independence, that is happiness. And wherever there is irresponsible, without creativity, where there is a dependence, he says that is misery and that is slavery. Therefore, the slavery has been abolished legally, but psychologically, socially, we see we don't stay together, families don't stay together. There are wealthy people, the wife is in one place, husband is in one place, mothers are lying alone. Today is Mother's Day. Do we need to celebrate Mother's Day? Because in India we never celebrated Mother's Day because everybody were with their mothers only. The business, the family, were all staying together. इसीलिए सेलिब्रेट करना पड़ता है, कार्ड भेजना पड़ता है, फ़ोन करना पड़ता है, फेस टाइम करना पड़ता है. आई लव यू मदर. अरे आपने पहले कभी बोला है माँ को? कभी माँ ने बोला है कि मुझे ग्रैटिट्यूड कार्ड भेजो? बिकॉज इट वॉज इन द नस नस में भरा था, खून खून में भरा था. अभी करना पड़ता है. इसलिए लेट अस अंडरस्टैंड द नरेटिव्स प्रॉपरली so that our questions are not redundant and we learn to grow. Thank you very much. We'll see you again tomorrow at 5:30.
RG Media YouTube channel. Like, share, subscribe.